Let me tell you something directly, as if we were sitting side by side, because probably no one has told you this clearly before. Most older men are missing opportunities with women not because they are unattractive or past their prime, but because they speak poorly. Yes, it's that simple. They use weak, predictable, boring words and believe that attraction is just a matter of luck. It is not. And here comes the part that may make many uncomfortable. Women are not attracted only by what they see, but by what they feel when you speak, and the power of words in attraction. That feeling is triggered by specific words. Words that convey confidence, leadership, mystery, or the exact opposite. That is why two men with the same age, the same appearance, and even the same status can have completely different results. One generates interest almost effortlessly, while the other is ignored. Now, we are not talking about manipulative phrases or cheap tricks. That does not work in the long run. We are talking about understanding female psychology intelligently and using language as a tool for real connection. Because a man who knows what to say and how to say it automatically positions himself above average, and this is where many fail. They think they must impress, brag, or convince. Wrong. The most powerful words are not the longest or the most complex. They are the ones that generate specific emotions at the right moment. And that is exactly what you are going to discover today. In this video, I will show you 5 key words that older men use with intention to spark attraction in women. Simple words, but loaded with psychological meaning. Words that completely change the dynamics of a conversation. Female psychology and communication. If you understand this, you will not only communicate better, you will stand out without needing to compete, because rejecting her sometimes makes you more attractive. Other men keep saying the same old things. You will be playing at another level. Pay attention, because what you are about to learn can completely change the way a woman perceives you from the very first conversation. 1. The word no. Why does rejecting her sometimes make you more attractive? Let me ask you something and answer yourself with total honesty. How many times have you said yes when you actually wanted to say no? To a date that didn't interest you that much? To a conversation that bored you? To being available at all times just so you wouldn't miss the opportunity? And here comes the uncomfortable truth. Each of those unnecessary yeses lowers your value, because even if no one tells you directly, a man who is always available becomes predictable, and the predictable rarely generates attraction. Now, it's not about becoming someone cold or distant. It's about the psychological power behind a word as simple as no. When a man knows how to say no calmly, without aggression, and without the need to over-justify himself, he conveys something. 2 words, and they're very specific: emotional impact, control. And well-managed control is one of the most attractive qualities you can project. This is where many fail. They think that to be liked by a woman, they must please, adapt, and always agree. But that doesn't create a real connection. It creates boredom. Because if you don't have clear boundaries, if everything seems fine to you, if you accept everything, then you aren't showing who you really are. Snort. And attraction starts precisely there. Attraction starts precisely there, in authenticity. Imagine this situation. She proposes something to you at a time when you already have plans. The common mistake is to cancel everything just to say yes and look good. But a man who understands his value responds differently. Snort. He says something like, I can't today, but let's see another day. Look closely. There is no emotional rejection. There is no tension. Only calm. There is no tension. Only clarity. That small no completely changes the perception. You are no longer someone who revolves around her. You are someone who has their own life, and that generates something very powerful. Respect, because a no used correctly doesn't push away. It filters. It filters out those who don't value your time and attracts those who do, with confidence and masculine presence. Furthermore, it creates an interesting psychological effect. When you are not available all the time, your presence becomes more valuable. It is the same logic as to why scarce things attract more attention. Now be careful. With this, saying no is not being rude, arrogant, or defiant. That is another mistake. Tone is everything. A calm, relaxed no, even with a slight smile, has much more impact than a defensive or aggressive one. Snort, in fact, many times, you don't even need to say the full word. You can convey that limit naturally, without tension. The important thing is that you don't feel the need to please at any cost, because here is the key point that few understand. When you respect yourself, others notice it without you having to explain it. And yes, it might seem contradictory. At first, you were taught that to attract someone, you must get closer, be more present, say yes more often. 2. The word calm. How to convey control without appearing to convey control, without appearing dominant. But in practice, what emotional intelligence and attraction really highlight is the opposite. A man who knows when to step back, when to set boundaries, when to say no without fear, snort, type of man, doesn't compete. He is the difference. So the next time you feel that pressure to say yes, just to please others, no. Stop for a second, Nort. Ask yourself if you really want to do it, and if the answer is no, say it without guilt, without drama, without long explanations. Because sometimes a single well-used word can say much more about you than 1,000 attempts to impress. The word calm. How to convey control without looking like it. How to convey control without appearing dominant, Let me paint a very common scene for you. Snort. You are talking to a woman and suddenly she appears a bit tense, indecisive, or even emotional. Maybe something didn't go as she expected, or she is simply testing how you react. And this is where most men make a silent yet fatal mistake. They react with the same energy. They speed up, try to explain too much, justify themselves, or how to create a real connection. Worse, they lose emotional control. Now listen to this carefully, because it is key. In moments like these, what a woman perceives is not so much what you say, but how you hold yourself. And that is where a simple but powerful word comes in. Calm, but be careful, It is not the word itself that generates the impact, it is the way you use it. Because yes, said incorrectly, it can sound condescending or even irritating, but when a man says it with calm, with confidence, without pressure, the effect is completely different. He is not trying to control the situation by force. He is showing that he is already in control, and that changes everything. Most men believe they must fix the moment, that they have to offer solutions, convince, explain, demonstrate, but that often transmits the opposite, nervousness. And nervousness, even if it is subtle, can be felt. A man who says calm from a place of emotional stability is communicating something much deeper. Snort. Nothing about this unsettles me, and psychologically, that generates a sense of security. Now, let's be clear. This is not about invalidating what she feels. It's not about saying, calm down, to silence or minimize her. That is a mistake, a huge mistake that many men make. It's about being present in the situation without losing your center. Imagine she says something like, I don't know if this is going to work. An insecure man panics, starts justifying, trying to convince, promising things, but a man who understands the game responds with something. An insecure man panics, starts justifying, trying to convince, promising things. But a man who understands the game responds with something like, relax, there's no rush, let's see how it goes. Notice the difference. He's not forcing anything. He's not reacting from fear. He's setting the pace, and that is emotional leadership, because here comes another truth that few accept. Attraction is not just built by what you do, but by how you make the other person feel in moments of uncertainty. Snort. If you stay firm and relaxed. Of course, you automatically create a space where she can let her guard down, and when someone lets their guard down, real connection begins. Now, something important. This word works because it is consistent with your attitude. If you are nervous on the inside, and 3, the interesting word, the power of not over-validating, but say calm down on the outside, it won't work. It shows. The key is that your language reflects your internal state. And this is where many older men, final reflection, have an advantage when they know how to use it well. They don't try to impress. They don't react impulsively. They observe, they listen, and then they speak with observing. They listen, and then they speak with intention. That makes them stand out effortlessly. So the next time you are in a situation where the energy becomes tense, instead of rushing to react, slow down. Breathe, stay firm, and if you decide to use that word snort, do it from a place of real, not feigned calm, because in the end, it's not the word that attracts, it's what it conveys. And a man who conveys calm in the midst of chaos will always be remembered. 3. The interesting word, the power of not over-validating. There is something you have probably done many times without realizing it, listening to a woman, and almost immediately reacting with exaggerated enthusiasm. Telling her that everything she does is incredible, that everything she says seems fascinating to you, that everything about her is perfect. Telling her that everything she does is incredible, that everything she says is fascinating, that everything about her is perfect. While it sounds logical because you think it will make her feel good, the reality is different. And here comes the uncomfortable part. When everything seems incredible to you, nothing really is. Because over-validation has a silent effect that many men do not perceive. Instead of generating attraction, it reduces the impact of your words. They lose weight, become predictable, and worst of all, they stop being credible. Now think of this as if it were a normal everyday conversation without complicated strategies. When someone reacts to everything with the same level of enthusiasm, your mind starts to disconnect because there is no contrast, no mystery, no filter. And that is where a simple yet extremely effective word comes in. Interesting. Not because it is magical, but because it represents something much deeper. Judgment. A man who uses this word correctly is not trying to impress. He is not competing to please. He is observing, evaluating, and then responding calmly, me. And that completely changes the dynamic, because when you don't overreact, you generate something very specific in the other person. Curiosity. She starts to wonder, what are you really thinking? She begins to notice that you are not so easy to read, And instead of feeling that she has already completely won you over, she feels there is more to discover. And that is key, and that is key. Because attraction doesn't grow when everything is clear from the beginning. It grows when there is a small space of uncertainty, when not everything is given immediately. Now, this does not mean becoming cold or distant. That is a common mistake. It is not about removing emotion. It is about rationing it, because there is an important difference here that you must understand. Validating is not the same as over-validating. Validating is acknowledging something genuinely when you really feel it. Over-validating is doing it constantly without a filter, almost like an automatic reflex. And the automatic is rarely authentic. And the automatic is rarely attractive. A man who says interesting at the right moment is showing that he is not easily impressed, that he has standards, that he does not react out of necessity but by choice, and that, even if it is not said out loud, is perceived, because in the end, words do not work in isolation, they function as signals. And this word in particular sends a very clear signal. I am present, I am attentive, but I am not. I am not trying to earn your approval, and that completely flips the script. The word lets a subtle leadership that few women ignore the roles. Now you are no longer the one seeking validation. It is she who begins to seek it from you. And this is where many men are surprised, because they haven't changed their appearance, nor their status, nor their situation. They have only changed the way they respond. They have stopped handing out validation without measure and have started communicating with intention. That generates respect, and respect, although many underestimate it, is an essential foundation of attraction. Without respect, everything else is superficial and temporary. Furthermore, when your words have a filter, each one carries more weight. Each reaction counts, and that makes even the simplest thing have an impact. Because it is not the same to hear constant compliments as it is to receive a measured response. A thoughtful one that leaves room for interpretation. That feels different, and it's not manipulation, it's awareness. It is understanding that you don't need to impress every second snort, that you don't have. Show interest in an exaggerated way for someone to perceive it. Sometimes less expression generates more effect. So the next time you are in a conversation, instead of reacting automatically like most, lower the intensity a bit. Listen for real. Process and respond from a place of calm, not from the need to please. Because when your words stop being impulsive, they start being powerful. Powerful. And a man who knows how to measure what he says ends up standing out without saying too much. He ends up standing out without saying too much. For the word less. Subtle leadership that few women ignore. I am going to tell you something that many men do not want to hear, but you need to hear it. Most men do not fail due to a lack of experience. They fail due to indecision. And the worst part is they don't even notice. They stay waiting for the perfect moment. They overanalyze. They ask any questions, doubting every step, as if any move could ruin everything. And in the meantime, they lose something much more important than an opportunity. They lose presence because a man who does not take initiative, even if he has good intentions, ends up projecting insecurity. And this is where a word so simple that many underestimate it comes in. It is not just a word, it is a signal of direction, of clarity, of decision. Now, before you misunderstand, this is not about bossing around or imposing yourself. It is not about controlling anyone. It is about something much more basic and more powerful. Stop operating from constant doubt because, let's be clear, if you need approval for every little step, you are handing over control of the interaction. And when that happens, the energy shifts. You are no longer someone who leads, you are someone who follows. And that shows. The word let's, used correctly, conveys something different. It doesn't ask for permission insecurely, but it doesn't invade either. It marks a direction naturally, and that, even if it seems small, has a profound impact on how you are perceived. Because deep down, people respond to clarity, to the feeling that someone knows where they are going, not to perfection, but to decisiveness. And here comes a necessary critique. Many men believe that being good is enough, that being polite, respectful, and available is everything. But if you add indecision to that, you become invisible, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you aren't standing out at all. Attraction is not built only with intention, it is built with direction, and that implies making small decisions without dramatizing them. Not turning every action into a major event. Not always waiting for everything to be guaranteed before you move. 5. The word later creates expectation and mystery effortlessly. Because if you wait too long, someone else with fewer doubts simply moves forward. Now, here is the key point. Saying let's isn't the goal, it is the result of a firmer mindset. It is the sigh that arises when you stop questioning yourself so much and start acting with more clarity. And yes, at first it may feel uncomfortable because you are breaking a pattern. You are moving from reacting to proposing, from waiting to leading. But that is exactly what you need. Not to impress, not to dominate, but to show that you have an internal structure, that you aren't lost in the interaction, that you don't depend entirely on what the other person says or does, and that builds trust. Because when someone perceives that you know how to move naturally without forcing it, without excessive doubt, they automatically relax. They no longer have to carry all the leadership. They don't feel like everything depends on them, and that is where the dynamic changes. Now, an important warning: if you try to use this word from a place of insecurity, it will show. It's not what you say, it's where you say it from. That's why, rather than repeating it, you must work on what it represents. Decision, clarity, movement. So take this as a wake-up call, not as an empty critique. Sigh. Stop dwelling in constant doubt. Stop waiting for the constant moment. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start moving, even if it's just small steps. Because a man who moves forward, even if not perfectly, will always be ahead of the one who only thinks. Scoff. And in the end, it's not the word go that makes the difference. It's the fact that you finally decided to use it. 5. The word later creates expectation and mystery effortlessly. Scoff. There is a mistake many men make without realizing it, and it is one of the most damaging to attraction. They give everything too quickly. Scoff. Time, attention. Scoff. Time, attention, availability, immediate responses. As if they were afraid that if they don't, the opportunity will disappear. And here's the reality that few want to accept. When you give everything immediately, you lose value, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you eliminate something essential in any human connection. Anticipation. Think about it. What hooks the mind most is not what it already has. Scoff. It's what it feels is yet to come, what hasn't been completed, what remains pending. And that is where a word as simple as it is powerful comes in. Later isn't an excuse. It's not avoidance. It's rhythm control. A man who understands this doesn't rush to fill every space or respond to every impulse. At the exact moment it appears, He knows that time also communicates. He knows that not everything has to be resolved now, because when everything happens immediately, there is no tension, and without tension, there is no sustained interest. Now, be careful with this. We are not talking about ignoring, disappearing, or playing games with the other person. That type of behavior is immature, and it shows. Here, we are talking about something much more subtle, not overgiving, just because you can be present, you can show interest, but without completely eliminating space. The word later represents exactly that space, with intention, a small delay, a pause, a natural conclusion, a no. Everything has to happen this instant, and that generates something very interesting on a psychological level. It keeps the mind active, because when something is left open, the brain seeks to complete it, and that search creates focus, creates interest, creates memorability. It is no coincidence that you remember what was left unfinished more than what has already been completed. Now, taking it to something more daily, many men believe they must respond quickly, always be available, and never leave anything for later, because they think it shows interest, but in reality, it often transmits the opposite, urgency. And urgency, even if not spoken aloud, feels like neediness. A man who uses later, naturally, is saying something very different times my chives. I have a life, I have my own rhythm, and not everything revolves around this moment, and that doesn't push away. It positions you, because when you aren't completely available at every moment, your time is perceived as more valuable, and when something is valuable, it's cherished more. Time sai canis. Now, this only works if it's now. Hold on. This only works if it's coherent, if you say later, but are actually waiting anxiously for the next moment. It will show in your moment. It will show in your behavior. The key isn't the word, it's the mindset behind it. It's about not acting out of haste, not feeling that every interaction is your only chance, and understanding that what is genuine doesn't need to be forced in real time. And this is where many older men have a great opportunity if they know how to seize it, because with experience comes something many young men haven't mastered yet, patience. But the patience must be conscious, not passive. It's not waiting out of fear. It's pausing with intention. So the next time you feel that urge to solve everything now, to respond instantly, to fill every silence, stop for a second, not out of strategy, but out of control,